Welcome to episode 77 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy features conversations in Canadian theatre with artists of all stripes, from actors to director to playwright and more. If you want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like the podcast, I hope you'll consider leaving a comment or rating on Apple Podcasts or Google Music or wherever you get your podcasts. My guest, Scott Dermody, is a co-founder and core member of Soup Can Theatre and the Dora Awards and Outreach Manager for the Toronto Alliance of the Performing Arts.
So your position at TAPA, you're primarily focused on the Doras. Do you have a specific focus, or are you more of a jack of all trades?
It's kind of a split position. So technically, I'm the Dora Awards and Outreach Manager. So a lot of my time around this time of the year is Dora focused strictly, but throughout the year, it's all the ongoing Dora administration, but also our outreach programs. So I also manage the HipTix student discount program, as well as the City Special program. That position didn't used to exist, the combo of the two. It's just because I was the outreach manager part-time, and then the existing Dora manager left, and we were able to amalgamate the two positions into a full-time position.
The Dora, is there really a Dora season, or is it kind of like just sort of like when would a show have to open to be in contention for a Dora?
For sure, yeah. There's absolutely an official Dora season, which is actually, we're right on the threshold now. So technically, by the rules in the eligibility handbook, May 15th is the flip-over period, depending on when it falls in the calendar year. So as it stands, a production has to have at least 60% of its total run, plus the minimum number of performances for eligibility in the division prior to May 15th in order to be part of that current Dora year. Right. If it has less than either of those, then it flips over into the next one. Yeah. Cool. So there's a bit of a crossover period where Dora jurors from both seasons are actually going to see shows.
That's confusing.
It can be, but it works moderately well, I think.
Well, before we get into like how it works, just for everybody, I actually would like to ask you a bit about your theater background. Where do you come from in terms of theater, and how did you end up working for TAPA?
Sure. So I am primarily trained as an actor. I went to school for it. I went to Queen's University, and then when I graduated and moved to Toronto, I started doing the audition circuit and got an agent and started doing commercial stuff. And I really hated, this is just my own personal thing, I really hated the whole film and television, I don't know what to call it exactly, but it felt like a production line, and I didn't like that. Absolutely. So I wanted to find a way to be able to support a theater-based career primarily. And I figured the way to do that was through administration or box office work. I'd originally got involved actually because I was simply looking for a job in the industry, and I applied as a ticket seller at the TOTix booth, which unfortunately is now no longer a thing. Closed last year. But after doing a whole bunch of other odd jobs and Joe jobs and things like that, I applied there, worked there for a year, and then was recommended for the outreach manager position here. Worked as that for, I guess, about a year and a half. And then the Dora manager at the time stepped down. And as both positions were part-time, I talked to the executive director, and we created a full-time position as a result.
Nice. When did you, before we get into like all the TAPA stuff, I'm a little more curious about what sort of like drew you to theater as a youth? What was it that made you love it? What was it that made you decide that that's what you were going to go to school for?
Yeah. So I was originally going to go into architecture. So I was taking all these math and science courses, and while I still feel that architecture and engineering is a fascinating field, I still enjoy observing it. It was basically my high school drama teacher, I think, that turned everything towards the performing arts for me.
How did that happen?
I think it was the fact that it was something so different. And I went to a Catholic high school, so there were a lot of things that perhaps in public high schools you could do in public high schools that you generally can't do in Catholic high schools. But the teacher that I had was very adamant about pushing those boundaries, about certain subject matter that is kind of taboo in the Catholic world. I think that was a big part of it, that she was challenging me as an individual to expand my horizons, I suppose, broaden the worldview, as it were. But
how as somebody who was looking at an architectural career, how did and I'm sure that your parents were also looking forward to seeing you in an architectural career. How did they sort of take the news that you were making a major change?
You know what? They weren't too bad about it. They were kind of like, but what are you going to do for money? It's like, we get it. Okay, you love this thing, but you better have a backup plan.
That age-old question.
Yeah. So they were very supportive overall. Cautiously supportive because my parents are both accountants. So, they come from a very practical standpoint on things. But I don't know, it just seemed to work, I suppose.
Well, that's the important thing, is that it works.
Yeah.
There's, I've been speaking, everybody has sort of different varying levels of parental support when they make that choice.
I think it'd be really hard to do without.
Oh, it is. You basically have to just sort of put up with nagging for the rest of your life.
Brutal.
Yeah. I think I was talking to somebody just a couple of weeks ago who was like, my mom still asks when I'm going to
get a real job, right?
Yeah. I'm going to give up this thing.
Oh, jeez. Thankfully, I do owe them a lot of thanks because they were supportive. Again, cautiously, but supportive. And they did say, it's like, okay, if you're going to do this, you better be really good at something in it.
Yeah.
You better distinguish yourself somehow.
And did you, when they said that, did you have any idea what that was going to be?
Nope. No, when you're a high school student, right, you're like, okay, that means I'm going to get all the good roles. I'm going to play Hamlet all the time and blah, blah, blah. You never think about it in high school, whether there's administrative positions available that will actually help sustain your career as an artist.
In high school, if you'd asked me when I was in high school, I would have said, I'm going to be doing theater and movies, and I'll be living in some fancy mansions.
Of course.
So, that was obviously what's going to happen for me.
For sure.
I think we all have those sorts of illusions when we're in high school trying to decide. Because nobody up to that point has really given us any idea of what is a career in the theater look like.
It's true. And you know what? The arts are always one of the first programs to be hit when there are any kind of cuts.
Oh, absolutely.
The drama classes, dance classes, music classes, they always get the acts first. And we see the results of that, where the theater-going public for a long time has been dwindling, particularly as new technologies emerge. But the good news story is that it's starting to turn around again. The audiences are starting to come back again.
We're going to jump around, just to warn you.
Sure.
We're going to jump around a bit. Are there numeric numbers that you're seeing that sort of show that the audiences are getting younger and coming back?
So it's not, to a certain extent. The TAPA just released the TAPA Stats Report Phase 4. That was at the Arts Advocacy Day at City Hall last November. And while I can't quote stats right now, just because I didn't think to bring that report in with me, though the previous 3 incarnations of the stats report had all indicated that there was a major decline in ticket sales across the board, and the audiences were leaving, and part of TAPA's mandate for a long time, and still is, was to help turn that around and to help bring audience development tools to the fore and marketing tools and that type of thing. And I don't know whether it's through our work or through just the fact that we're through that massive recession or whatever. But the stats are proving that the ticket sales have turned around. Not a lot, but they're on an upward trend as opposed to the downward trend that they've been on for a decade or more.
Well, that is definitely good news.
Yeah.
I think one of the aspects in the theater world that sort of like encourages people to go to the theater sometimes is whatever's happening on Broadway or sometimes in London.
Sure.
And if there are shows that are massive there is sort of a trickle down as people sort of see it and things like that, I think.
Sure, and if those shows get a big enough profile and then come to Toronto, that always helps, of course. Yeah.
I can't think of a show that's come to Toronto that's got such a Hamilton. Obviously.
Sure, Hamilton. I mean, Warhorse, when it came,
was
was a big hit, and things like that come through.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the number of sit-down shows that stay for a long time is just a thing of the past these days.
Well, that's the sort of the sad thing, because I was in theater school in the age of Phantom of the Opera and and these shows, and we all thought this is how it's going to be forever.
Yeah.
These shows will sit down and run for 10 years or more, and now I think a 6-month run is.
You're laughing if you get a 6-month run.
When you moved over, when you started doing the administrative thing, did you find that a difficult transition? Did you go through any kind of period?
Definitely.
Of...
Yes, it's a different approach to the work, obviously. Although I guess it was tempered by the fact that I'd begun producing work in university through I don't even know how that happened. It was just through a series of odd coincidences, but because I had some of that producing background and working more with, I suppose, spreadsheets and numbers and contracts and things, it wasn't as much of a shock. I suppose the place that it really is obvious and apparent for me is my body. The desk job aspect is like, okay, 3 days a week in theater school, I'd be having like a 3-hour intensive movement class, and now I'm here sitting at a desk for the bulk of the time, which is fine. It's very different. It took a while to get used to.
It's amazing how quickly that all those movement class exercises go out the window as soon as you're sitting at a desk for a while.
It's true. I try to keep a foot in that, but it can be tough.
We all. I think any of us who've worked a desk job for any period of time all try to, but there's something about sitting that does unfortunate things to the lower part of one's torso.
True story.
As outreach, what does the outreach manager at TAPA do?
A couple different things. So the two programs are the HipTix program and the City Special program. Now, the HipTix is very much the public side of it. City Special, not so much. City Special is very much a subscriber base. So I'll start with HipTix. HipTix is $5 tickets for students between the ages of 14 and 29 to go see theater, dance, and opera without that prohibitive burden of the ticket price. The average theater ticket price in Toronto is anywhere from $20 to $30 to $40, depending on what company you're going to. And a big part of promoting that program is going into schools, talking to high school and university students about it, what shows are available, and helping to promote the community in that way. But if we're given enough time by the teacher in the classroom, we give that typical pitch of, here are the shows, here's a great opportunity for you to go see these things. But then you also get into a conversation about why, and why is it important to go see something that's live? Why is theater relevant today in a digital age? What about it excites us as individuals, and then what excites them? What do they want to see on stage? And especially if we're talking to drama classes, sometimes they're just there for an arts credit, which is fair. But to legitimize the fact that you can make a career out of this. It's a patchwork career, sure, but to have someone from the outside, aside from the teacher, saying, yes, this is the thing that you can do. You might not make millions of dollars, but you can certainly put food on your table and make a living at it. So it's trying to get rid of some of those preconceptions that may have been built up by their peers or by their parents or anything like that, and perhaps open it up a little to them. And then so that's primarily what we do with HipTix is going to schools. City Special is something a bit different, where it's primarily a ticketing program again. where producers are providing these tickets and they're reimbursed a certain amount from sponsorship from TD Bank, but we're able to offer them at no cost to social service agencies. Mm-hmm. So we have a list of about, I think we're at 103 subscribing social service agencies throughout the city that we send out a listing of here are all the tickets that are available on a given day, given month, whatever. They talk to their clients and then book tickets based on what's available, and they don't have to pay at all.
That's great.
It's two marginalized communities. We look at newcomer groups, refugee groups, women's shelters. There's quite a wide range of organizations that are subscribed, but that program is really exciting just because it's people that wouldn't have access regardless. And HipTix and City Special are two parallel programs that we're really proud of. They're both 10 years old as of this year, and they've really taken off in the last couple of years.
I remember when HipTix started, and I mean, I was, I think, already out of the age range, but it was, I mean, already at that point, we were, I think, in the theater starting to see a decline in, or an increase in the age of the theater goer and the decline of the audience numbers.
For sure. Well, aging population, right?
Yeah. When you're talking with the students about about the theater, what they want to see on the stage, what kind of things are you finding out from them about what they want to see in the theater as opposed to what they think the theater is?
Sure. I mean, a lot of what they want to see is they want to see comedy, they want to see action. Mm-hmm. They want to see some of the kinds of things that they might be able to get in film that they're not necessarily seeing on stages. And because, I mean, the crux of it often I find is that because Toronto's such a diverse city and such a multicultural hub, the plays that are happening on stages don't necessarily always reflect that reality. And so, if you're in one of the outlying regions and you're not seeing the stories of your culture being represented on stages, then why should I bother going? Yeah. A lot of companies are doing better at bringing in that kind of work, but it's always an uphill battle. But they want to see their stories. They want to see what's relevant to them. They want to see issues that millennials are facing. They want to see whatever the cultural background they have represented on stage well. They want to see things that are accessible, not just museum pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of kids think. I mean, a lot of times in high school, your first exposure to theater is Shakespeare.
Sure, yeah.
And you're never really that enthusiastic about the Shakespeare that you're seeing. And if that's what you think theater is, then that doesn't really speak to you.
Yeah, it's old dead white guys.
Yes, yes. And that's, I mean, and in Toronto theater, we do have a bit of a history of really doing a lot of the old dead white guys on our stages. And in fact, I know there's a lot of theater companies that get formed to perform those old dead white guys. And
sure, and there's a certain value in that.
There is a value.
Absolutely.
I just think that we do see an extraordinarily large amount of that particular theater. Times.
Right.
Yeah. In terms of the Dora Awards, so the nominations aren't out yet.
No.
Right, no. The nominations come out the month before the ceremony, is that it?
Generally, yeah. So the nominations are always announced, usually one of the last days of May, one of the first days of June, depending on how the calendar year falls. This year, they're going to be announced Tuesday, May the 30th. Or 31st, whichever. I'm not looking at a calendar right now. No. But that Tuesday, starting at 10 a.m. at the Sony Center, it's always fun and exciting when they're announced, and there will be a couple of ancillary awards also presented during that time, and then the awards themselves happen a month later. So June 26th, Monday, June 26th, we're going to be at the Elgin Theatre for the 38th annual Dora Mavemore Awards.
Oh, not the outdoor.
No. It was for the past 3 years. It's been at Harbourfront Centre, but that's sort of the tenure that we have at different locations. We try to move every couple of years, just to get a nice representation of the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving back indoors.
Nice. How involved are you with the ceremony itself, or are you just like the logistics of like the nominations and the awards themselves, and you stay out of the way of the ceremony?
Yeah, primarily I'm looking at the logistics. I also do a lot of logistics of the ticketing and some of the VIP presenters for the day of. For the actual creative show, we bring on a creative team. So there's a director, usually a musical director, and then the host and a writer, and we bring them all on. And they've been working already for about a month or so. So this year it's going to be hosted by Raul Beneja, and he's going to be bringing his band, The Big Time, on stage. Directed by Ed Roy and written by Diane Flax.
Nice.
So it'll be it's a great team, and they've Ed Roy's been directing it for a couple of years now. I think it's his third or fourth time around.
So as the Dora Awards, there's a jury that goes to, I guess they try to go to as many shows as they can. Supposed to see, I mean, there's a lot of shows that are up for, can be considered for Dora Award.
Yes.
And so, first off, how does one become a member of that jury?
A couple different ways. So every year there's a selection process. There's a committee that is struck, the Dora Jury Selection Committee, and comprised usually of a couple TAPA board members and a few individuals from the community, with at least one representative per division. And the working group is tasked with bringing a certain number of names to the table, just that they come up with. We also accept nominations from the community. So if you wanted to be a Dora juror, you would have to get 2 TAPA member companies to co-nominate you online via form. And there are a couple other ways that names can come to the table, but those are the main ones. It's about a 3-month process, actually, to cast the juries, where they start with a whole big pot of names, and then they work very hard to actually strike a balance of a number of different factors. Age, discipline, background, a whole bunch of different things like that. It's not always as balanced as it could be, but we do the best that we can to do that. Mostly it's in terms of availability of people. People that we'd really like to be on the jury to make it even that much more balanced just aren't in town, so they can't commit. And once they're cast, and we have just shy of 60 jurors starting right around now, we cast each division with approximately 12 jurors. So it's broken up into 5 divisions. We've got the general theater, independent theater, musical theater, opera / touring, theater for young audiences, and dance. Each of those juries has 12 members, approximately. And they go out to see just over 200 productions in a year. Not all of them are seeing the same shows. Each jury, each division sees different shows, but and it varies widely in terms of the number of shows that they're going to see.
So in terms of is there an expectation laid out for each juror that they should see? Do they have a minimum number of shows?
There is, yeah. So they're expected to see all of the shows registered, but because the people that are on the jury are working professionals and they've got day jobs and things like that, it's understood that they're not going to be able to get to see everything. So while we expect 100%, there's a minimum threshold that's met. So 85% of the total number of shows that are registered through the year. If you drop below that 85%, you might not be able to vote at the end of the year. Yeah.
And then I guess at some point they'll have to sit down in a room and hash it out.
The funny thing is, a lot of people coming in as a juror think that we do the voting in the room, and we don't.
Oh, okay.
All of the voting is done over email with Excel spreadsheets as the ballots. The meetings that we have through the year are to discuss the shows, but not necessarily campaign for certain people to be nominated and things like that. We meet at least 2 or 3 times a year with every jury, and the bulk of those meetings is taken up with discussing the shows in as much detail as time allows. Trying to get into as much of the artistic details and elements of the different categories as possible. The purpose of which is to be able to talk about the shows, because jurors are under a confidentiality agreement, but also to gain a different perspective. Because everyone's coming with a different lens, someone's a designer, someone's an actor, someone across the table could bring up a point that I'd never considered
Of
about
course.
a lighting element or something like that. So it really helps to flush out how each individual juror feels about a show.
Right. I mean, I'm sure that in the end helps make the voting. Well, in theory, everybody has a better understanding of what's working in the show. Isn't it?
That's the idea. Yeah, that's the idea. And it also helps alleviate major surprises when the nominees are announced.
Yeah.
At least within the jury, anyways.
Do you ever find a situation where the conversation is happening and somebody realizes that they missed a show that they really should have seen?
I mean, if someone's missed a show and the discussion goes on, they obviously... I've never really encountered a time where that specifically has happened. It'll be like, oh, darn.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So what was the... So, I mean, in terms of like thinking about the Doras, I've heard people refer to them as, Toronto's Tony Awards, or I've heard the Tonys referred to as New York's Dora Awards, occasionally. But what was the reason for starting? Like, what's the history of the Doras? Why were they started? And
yeah, it's funny because I love when we're referred to as the Tony Awards for Toronto. I suppose it helps as a frame of reference for people. It's just the scale is so different.
That's very true.
The Tony Awards are televised, and there's a huge commercial theater market in New York, which we just simply don't have. We're more on comparison on the same level as, say, Boston or another city of that size.
Yeah.
But that being said, they were organized in 1978. As a way to recognize outstanding achievements in Toronto theatre, and recognizing that awarding each other and recognizing the work that is happening is important because it so often goes unrecognized. If something that is a box office hit isn't necessarily an artistic masterpiece. So,
True, yeah.
yeah, if all the public is getting is what the box office numbers or reviews, and not necessarily seeing what their peers are thinking about within the industry, then it's a bit too skewed to the commercial end of things.
Right.
But yeah, there was a committee that was struck in 1978, headed by Millie Drain, and they got together with. Let me see the names here. I have to actually read them because I don't know them offhand. Anne Antkew, Ronald Bryden, Bill Glasgow, Graham Harley, Leon Major, Sean Mulcahy, Peter Paroff, Heiner Piller, Susan Rubes, Pat Stewart, and Sylvia Tucker. That was the original group of founders. And it's been chugging along ever since.
It's interesting because Heiner Piller was the artistic director of my theater school.
Well, there you go.
There. So, interesting. He didn't exactly tell us about that particular part of his history from his office.
That's fine.
Now, at this time of year, when you're just about to do that crossover of juries, and I imagine that the voting will be starting very shortly.
Sunday this coming weekend, the 14th of May.
Then decisions have to be made, and then the nominations are announced, and then in a month after that, there's an awards ceremony. As your focus shifts over to that from the outreach, is your day consumed with a lot of emails and planning? Or
yes.
Yeah?
By far. Yeah, it pretty much eclipses any of the other outreach work that I can be working on at any time. And yes, the intensity picks up basically this week, where we've got the juries that are finishing up having their final meetings this week and last week. The incoming juries having their orientation meetings a week and a half ago, and still a few of them happening right now. So it's intense in terms of the amount of time that I spend in meetings. So as a result, the backlog of emails does end up happening. So I do forewarn anyone that I tend to work with around now. It's like, okay, it might be a little bit before I come back to you. But and then it just picks up steam from here on in. May is probably the most intense. Ironically, June is a little bit easier just because the voting's already been done. It's mostly prepping the show itself and monitoring how the ticketing situation is going.
Yeah. Does that get difficult to manage? Just because there's a finite number of seats, and each company wants as many people as possible from their company to be able to go. And
it's not too bad it depends on how it's managed. We had a really great relationship with the box office at Harbourfront Centre for the past 3 years. And, we're developing a very good relationship with the Elgin for this year. So it's finding a method of working around our needs as well as the venue's needs and finding the common ground in between. Because the bulk of the tickets are comps.
Yes, that's true.
The vast majority, whether it's nominees or sponsors or other various and sundry VIPs that are invited, the jurors themselves are invited for comps. So being able to manage the flow of that information and who's getting access to those tickets can be critical. And because we're going into a new box office, finding out, okay, you work it a little bit differently over here, so we're going to adjust. And then being able to, manage the pricing for the nominee guests' tickets and then for the community at large. Right. Unfortunately, it does mean that those tickets end up being a little bit expensive, towards $100 all in. But that's the reality of the situation, is that because we have so many comps that are going out there in order to put on the show, we don't have a choice but to charge a bit of money like that. Thankfully, though, a couple of years ago, there was a situation that came up a financial situation where we had to charge nominees a nominal ticket price. It didn't go over well in the community. I will fully admit that. And we recognized that it was poorly received. So the following year we said, okay, well, we're going to be able to offer nominee comps again. It's just everything else is going to have to go up a little in order to compensate. Right. It's the reality of the business, quite frankly. Yeah. And I was quite happy that we went back to the nominee comps, just because it's important to be able to get them to come, to be there if they win the award, and if they have to pay, that's a little hard. I know that other awards do charge nominees.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the things about the Doras is that you don't have to buy your trophy should you win. And since we don't make a lot of money, it is important that if you're nominated, if you're lucky enough to be nominated, that you can easily attend without having to reach in your pocket. Yeah. So, I actually think it's like it was a few years ago that I realized that every award ceremony that you see on TV, then the person who wins has to purchase that statue. That I was very glad to learn that for the Dora Awards you didn't have to do that.
It's true, unless you want an extra one.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it happens that two people share an award because they're co-nominated, not from different productions, but two lighting designers on the same project, for example. And that does happen where artists will purchase an additional one if they want to.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. If you're sharing it with somebody that you should have it's hard to do the timeshare.
I get it for 6 months, you get it for 6 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is there a part of the Dora Awards that is your favorite part?
I think it's the sense of community that bringing all of these people to... It's not the whole community that can come on that night, obviously. The people who are attending are typically the producers and the nominees in that given year. So the nominees tend to be different on a regular basis. But the fact that a large portion of the community is coming together on one night a year to celebrate the work that's being done, that part I love. The fact that it is celebratory.
Yeah.
There's another event that's attached to the Doras, the Nominees Toast, which happens about a week or two prior to the actual award ceremony, where it's just the nominees and the jurors and then the TAPA board of directors, and they get together and we toast the nominees. And again, it's that same idea of just celebrating the work that has happened in the past year, that we're not just toiling away in obscurity, and seeing each other face to face, because so often it's always emails if we're not working directly with someone on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, there are few enough opportunities for the community to come together.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes when we refer to the theater community, I sort of think to myself, how is it like, what's the community? Because we don't get together.
Yeah.
But it's good that there are events like this that do allow us to come together.
I think so.
Another event that I was really happy to see and to have, people come together was the Indie X. To be able to bring a lot of indie artists together to learn from each other and to learn from panels and to get resources about how to independently produce, which is something that has become a very important part of being in the theater.
Absolutely, and especially for indie producers. I'm an indie producer myself, and a lot of the times you feel like you're working in isolation. Unless you are lucky to be able to connect with people on a regular basis in person. But the Indie X conference is the second year of putting it up since it was reinvigorated from its former self. For years and years, it was a yearly event for a couple decades actually. And it used to be a full weekend of workshops and panels and things like that. And it eventually actually morphed into the TAPA Trade Series, which is an ongoing professional development workshop series where we offer about between 40 and 50 workshops a year on a whole bunch of different aspects, anything from SEO optimization or to first aid training to writing grants, a whole bunch of things like that. But it was felt that last year, when we brought it back as an actual event, that it was time. That there is a very strong indie community out there right now doing a lot of great work, and it seemed that there was this hunger to get together again and to talk about the issues that are on hand.
I'd agree with that, because I think that as an indie producer myself, you often feel like you are working away alone. Yeah. Doing your best to make it go of it, and it's so important to get together and realize that we're all doing this. In terms of the relationship between TAPA and indie artists, do you find that it's a hard sell for a lot of indie companies to join TAPA?
It depends. It depends on why companies would want to join TAPA. We always think of Okay, let me rephrase.
Sure.
What I feel that TAPA is most publicly represented as is the Dora Awards. Mm-hmm. People know the Doras, and it tends to be the carrot, right?
Yeah.
But because of the other programs that we have on offer, I think that the value of a TAPA membership is much greater than just the Doras themselves. Yes, there is a membership fee to be paid, and I understand that for a company who's on a very, very limited budget, it can be a big decision to make whether to do it or not. And this year I want to be Dora eligible. Next year I don't think we're going to be able to afford it. But if you're taking the whole package into consideration, gaining access to steeply discounted tickets for some of the trade series events, or something like the industry listings, or some ticket offers that go out there for TAPA members only, access to the Travel Retreat and Initiatives program, which you can apply for funding to essentially bring in artists from outside or go yourself somewhere to do research. We can help pay for the flight component of going there. Or to have a retreat. If you want to have like an artist's getaway for your company, you can use that application and do that, and it's partially subsidized. So it depends on what you're using it for. There are a lot of other programs that we offer, and gaining access to the Hiptychs and City Special program, being able to get that extra outreach arm to be able to promote your show in locations that you would not have the resources to get to. Discount media rates come along with TAPA membership as well, and being able to be listed on the TO Night website or app. Actually, the TO Night app is a going concern. So it's the doors are there, and they're great. We love them, but it's not the only thing that TAPA is about.
Do you think that TAPA sort of gets a little bit of short shrift, that people think that TAPA equals the doors, and especially with some younger, more indie companies, that they don't really see all the other benefits that are there?
I suppose it depends. I mean, it would take... I mean, you'd have to look at our website and see, okay, there's all these other programs. But if you don't know that we do them anyways, why would you look there?
Yeah.
Right? So we do our best to try to get the word out that we have all these other programs, and to dispel the notion that we're just the doors. Yeah. I think we're successful to a degree in that. It can be difficult to communicate with people that we don't know are out there yet. You know, if they have a brand new company, they're just out of theater school or something like that, and they know about the doors, but they don't know about these other things. So it's an ongoing challenge, one that we don't have a silver bullet for, but it's just something that we're constantly working on. And
do you think that events like IndieX sort of like help to get that word out, that there's more to TAPA than just the doors?
I really hope so. And I think that kind of an event and the amount of promotion that goes into it, and the resulting discussions and social media chatter about it, I hope that it helps. Yeah. You know, because that word of mouth about something like that it gets people excited about ideas. Yeah. I would hope would translate into that greater understanding of what it is that we're doing and trying to do. And then there's, you know, the advocacy component too, where I think perhaps a lot of the... Okay, I don't want to generalize, but there may be a perception that they don't realize that TAPA does a lot of advocacy on the municipal level to increase arts funding and to get that per capita dollar amount to at least match some of the other major cities in this country, because we're on the bottom end of things, which is absurd.
That is kind of absurd, being like one of the more major markets for theatre in Canada.
Yeah, and it's to the benefit of our entire community for indie artists and any artists to get involved in that kind of a process.
Absolutely, and I mean, indie artists have a lot of skin in the game in terms of theatre spaces.
Spaces, absolutely.
You know, Storefront lost its space, and Unit 102, and like there's been an attrition as far as indie spaces go. And it's hard to see that stuff happen when there's like a thriving community of artists that can pass through a space.
Yeah, it's like how do you boost an indie company to the point of sustainability when you're working from project grant to project grant?
Yes,
and the project grants aren't a guaranteed thing; they're never a sure thing, and they're becoming fewer and fewer because the competition gets higher and the dollars that are available is lower. So, it's a challenge. Yeah. But we do know that City Council has reiterated their commitment to the $25 per capita. It's not there yet. I mean, in comparison to Montreal, who I believe just announced that they're at $78 per capita for art spending, it's like our executive director has likened it to pushing water uphill sometimes. Yeah. But it's slowly but surely getting better. It's just a matter of pushing it just that much further.
It's hard when we spend, I mean, we'll change, you change mayors, and different mayors come in and they have different priorities, and they go from, some of them more arts friendly to some that aren't, or vice versa. And Toronto likes to imagine itself to be the Broadway of Canada, but we just aren't yet. I think we could be, but we have to put more into the industry to become that.
Sure, yeah, the investment absolutely has to be there. If Toronto wants to be a world-class cultural leader, then that capital has to be there. The investment and the interest has to be there. On a government level, on a philanthropic level, and on an individual basis, and it can be a real tough sell when there are so many other priorities competing for space.
Of course, it's like how do you? I don't envy people who are in government trying to make those choices, because it seems if you're focused on one thing, it seems easy. Well, of course you're going to support this thing. Yep. When you have everybody saying that, how do you make your choices?
I know it's hard to compare when you have like a social housing crisis in the same way and crumbling infrastructure. It can be hard to make the case for the arts, but I don't know. If you look at any of the great civilizations in the past, a lot of them, when we look at them in history class, we judge them by their art.
Well, that is absolutely the truth. Is that any civilization that's been worth anything has had great culture.
Yeah.
And it's to our detriment if we devalue it.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there? I mean, as we're sort of wrapping up, and you're sort of heading into, you're going to be focusing more and more. There's going to be more emails in your inbox and more meetings for the next few weeks. Just as in your person as outreach, maybe as the last little bit of outreach that you can do before the doors take over your life. What is one thing that you want people to know about theatre in Toronto, or about TAPA in general, that they might not know already?
Sure. Well, I would think that for TAPA specifically, I would want people to know that we are open and transparent as we can possibly be, and we're always willing to listen. We're going through a big... it may not be out there too much in the wilderness yet, but we're going to be getting the word out more and more this year that we're going through a DORA review process. Where 6 years ago we did a DORA review that changed a lot of the processes and categories and definitions. We're doing the same again this year. Won't be as much of a major change as 6 years ago, I anticipate. But to know that we value feedback, we value critical feedback hugely. We need to hear it from people. It's one thing to say something on social media like, I wish the Doors would do this and this and that. Mm-hmm. It's quite another to pick up the phone and call one of us and say, hey, why don't you consider this and try to make this kind of a change and update? Because that, to us, is much more valuable because you're communicating with us.
Right.
And we know what you want to think then. If it's just on social media, we might miss that because we happen to not be connected to you or something like that. So the critical feedback is very important, and we strongly, strongly want that kind of ongoing communication. And I guess about Toronto theatre in general is, I don't know if it's something that people don't necessarily know, but I always like to push boundaries, and I like to be uncomfortable with theatre. I suppose I would challenge people to push their comfort level about what theatre, dance, opera, any of those performing arts disciplines can be. Because it's too easy to sit back and do the same old thing.
Yes, yeah.
So that would be my personal thing about the Toronto theatre industry, and I think there are a lot of groups that are doing that very well. So kudos to them, but it should be more.
Awesome.
So I think that's my wrap up for that.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Scott.
I appreciate it. Thank you.